Shalom. Charles Robert Darwin, born 1809, 1882, was an English naturalist, a geologist, a biologist. He formulated the theory of evolution. He wrote it up together with Alfred Russel Wallace. He is considered one of the greatest men who have ever lived, one of the most influential figures in human history. And he believed in what one could say natural selection, with the weak die out, and those who are stronger or more adapted, more suited to survive, go on. And from that, animals, mankind, everything that exists evolves. That was a doctrine of Charles Darwin. And this has been tremendously important in the world. It's still important in the world. Every academic institution, most textbooks on biology, on natural history, and so on, all refer to it, go by it, and talk about it, teach it, and it has evolved. The theory of evolution itself has evolved. The changes have been made, introduced, but the overall guiding points are those that Darwin gave. And this is a problem because it's not correct. It is incorrect and it is misleading. And not only that, but people use it as an excuse not to live moral lives, to do immoral things, to deny the existence of God, or to deny the involvement of the Almighty in the world today. According to tradition, the creation of the world is dated from 5,782 years before the present, that is 3,760 BCE. Those who put it back a few hundred years, but we can go with this date, traditional date, for our purposes, doesn't make much difference. Genesis the first says, and God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image, in the image of God created him, male and female he created them. And God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. After the first man was created, the world was destroyed in about 1,656 years afterwards. And on Monday, 1656, came the flood. That is in 2105 BCE, there came the flood. All of mankind and all of the beasts of the earth were destroyed. Only Noah and his family were saved, along with the animals they took with them into the ark. And from then, we can say man began again. We can almost say that there was a new creation enacted. It says in Genesis 9, verse 18, now the sons of Noah went out of the ark with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Shem was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. So that took place about 4,127 years ago. And that's a lot of time in historical terms. All human history, all known human history can be condensed within that time. We still have a lot of space to spare. Don't let anyone tell you that too many things that we know, too many things about the past, to fit it all into that space of 4,100 years. Because not only can we fit it all in, but we have a lot of space left unaccounted for. And that is all we need. And it's a principle in research. You take the simplest solution, you take the least that you need, until you have reason to say otherwise. So this is what we have. And we have this theory of evolution, which actually did not really begin with Charles Darwin. The ancient Hindus had writings very similar to what he said. Also, some of the Greek philosophers also spoke in those terms. And even in Jewish sources, there are sayings that have been interpreted along those lines, even though this is doubtful. But it's worth quoting for what has been said, what the usual orthodox Jewish religious attitude to evolution has been. Was Rabbi Avigdor Miller, who's famous for books against, he wrote books against evolution, using common logic and also arguments and examples and even terminology similar to that found amongst Christian creationists. And these books are important. Another attitude is that of the Lubavitcher Rabbi. And the Lubavitcher Rabbi seems to say that the world was created as if evolution did take place, but it didn't. It was created as if it did, but it didn't. Or, however, whatever was needed, according to science, for the earth to come into effect, was already in place when the old world was created. So you can take it or leave it, and that leaves the question open one way or the other. Rabbi Yaakov Gerald Schroeder, he says everything is relative. The days of creation can maybe different time periods. And not only that we can consider these different time periods to be relative. A theory of relativity depends how you look at it, where you look at it. And he also quotes, or those who follow him, and he has quite a few followers, those who follow him quote different sources saying that the earth was created billions of years ago, or a long, long time ago, with similar figures to what the evolutionists give. And these are obscure minority opinions, but they exist. You also have the opinion of the first Israel, Rabbi Israel Lipschitz, 1782 to 1860. He quotes an opinion of the early rabbis that the world, before this world was created, the other worlds existed that were created and destroyed before then. And he says that this could be referred to the worlds of the dinosaurs, the worlds of different stages in the development of the world, and that's a possibility that he brings forward. And others have spoken along the same lines. Maimonides also is said to have stated the guide to the perplexed, the days, 7 days, the days of creation mentioned in Genesis could represent a stage in the causal chain, not literally a day of 24 hours as we know it, which is logical. And these are possibilities. At all events, according to the Bible, all of mankind descend not only from Adam, but from Noah, who came after him. Genesis 10, verse 1 said, "Now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons were born to them after the flood." That is, the flood took place in 2105 BCE. And after the flood, Noah and his family were the only ones to survive, and from them came all mankind. The Bible speaks of this. Shem, Ham, and Japheth were the 3 sons of Noah. From them emerged all families of the earth. All the races of the earth are descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And in the Genesis chapter 10, he gives a list of 70 descendants of Noah, which gave rise to the 70 nations of the earth. Actually, in the UN today, there are about 180, more than 180 nations, but some of them are sub-nations, nations that are split apart. Overall, it's accepted that in general, at least according to these traditions, that there are 70 subdivisions of mankind on earth today. And in principle, you could accept the theory of evolution and also Noah. There's no contradiction between them. But there is, insofar that the theory of evolution gives rise to an attitude, a thought concept, that will not allow two things to exist side by side. It's almost like a religion. It's absolute. You have to take it, believe in it, and everything else is subsidiary for it. It is considered an article of faith by its adherents. It is acolytes. The theory of evolution has its supporters. It has its disciples. It has those who follow it, believe in it, and promote it, and are fanatical about it. Don't make mistakes. That's what they are, and they're very forceful in promoting their theories, their ideas concerning it, and they look down upon those who do not agree with them. They are quite prejudiced and bigoted in their own way, even more than the people they pretend to be against. And evolution also determines how DNA findings are interpreted in their relation to history and to ethnic affiliations, and this is misleading. Evolution leads to misleading calculations, misleading considerations, historical misinterpretations, and it interferes with our correct understanding of what happened and the correct understanding of the Bible and the correct understanding of history. One of the proofs that Darwin talked about was the finches. The finches are little birds. You've probably seen them in cages. But he found them in the wild on a group of islands. And on different islands, he noticed that the different finches had different beaks. Some of them had short beaks, some of them had stiff, long, stiff beaks, and so on. And Darwin said that all these finches had come from one parent body or one parent couple, and the offspring had changed their beaks according to the different sources of food. Beaks changed as the birds developed different tastes for fruits, seed or insects picked from the ground or from cacti. Long pointed beaks made some of them more fit for picking seeds out of cactus fruits. Different types of food needed different beaks. Short, stouter beaks are best for eating seeds found on the ground. And 14 different species evolved, each with its own song, its own food preferences, and its own beak shapes. The birds with certain beaks on islands with food suited to those beaks would thrive, whereas those with different beaks would not. But they might do so on islands more suited to themselves. This attitude of Darwin concerning the beaks was later upgraded to the idea of mutations. Mutations take place. Mutations are changes in the genetic structure of an organism. Usually mutations are negative, nearly always. There are some cases where they may not be. The theory began that certain mutations would take place, and this mutation would have an advantage over those without the mutation, and therefore more organisms with this mutation would survive, and generation after generation this advantage would continue until eventually a new organism or a new type of the previous organism would emerge based on accumulated series of mutations that all had a positive direction and all were focused in the same area. So this is not true, or it has never been observed. It goes against all observations that show that mutations are nearly always negative, and they never accumulate changes one after generation, all pointing in the same direction. It just does not happen. But something almost like that does happen, but it happens much more quickly, and it has been observed. And what is that? That is gene transportation. The transference of genes from one organism to another, from one fish to another, from one animal to another, from an insect to another. Even between animals and plants is believed to take effect. So we have this example concerning fish or fishes. We have the sea raven. The sea raven is found in the northwest Atlantic and North Pacific Oceans. The sea raven, apparently in the Atlantic, at least a type of it, has an antifreeze gene. It lives on the bottom of the sea and has a gene against freezing, against the cold, that its blood does not congeal. And this gene helps it survive in cold areas. And we have the herring. The herring also was present in the same areas or nearby areas. And the herring had its spawning grounds in one area, and for reasons that periodically recur, the herring had to move its spawning grounds, its breeding grounds, to further north, to another area of the sea, where the water was colder and was also icier. And the herring, as it was then built, would not have been able to survive. So what happened? The sea raven excreted, we believe it was an excretion in the sea, this antifreeze gene. The herring picked it up, and therefore the herring was able to migrate further north than it previously had done. Later on, there was another fish, a smother kind of sardine, that also needed to move northward, and it also took on this antifreeze gene. And where did it get it from? It got it from the herring. The herring took it from the sea raven, and the smelt took it from the herring. And this is an example that we know of, but the numerous examples exist. And this evidently is what happened to the finches of Darwin, or something similar. On different islands or different areas, different genes were needed to produce different beaks. Some of the birds had the necessary beak, and they gave it the gene that produces beak to others. How did they do this? Is a kind of biological message went out. They excreted it into the air so that other birds picked it up, or alternately, there's a type of virus that can move from one gene to another and take copies of the necessary genetic material with it. This has been observed in the laboratories. This happens, and this too may have been how the genes for the necessary beaks move from one bird to another through this virus that spreads them. And, this happens all the time. It happens in plants and animals. Those that had the needed gene, beak type, gave the gene to those who did not. And in this way, changes can take place in a very short period of time. They can take place almost immediately. And not only that, they can take place with the whole population. The whole of the population can change almost at once. You don't need millions of years, and the whole involved process of survival, don't survive, natural selection and all the others. You have this one-time event that happens in response to a biological need. A biological message goes out and triggers a response that has been measured and that occurs in reality. And this process can explain all known genetic changes. And the scientists are still observing this, but there's a proof about it going back more than 10 years. And there are some who believe that many genomes, that is the genetic structures, genetic arrangements, up to 50% or perhaps even more of the changes observed within them can be attributed to genetic transfer from one organism to another. And this in effect replaces evolution. The beauty of evolution was that it gave a structure to reality. That is what scientists look for. That is what people who think look for. They want a structure for reality and explanation. A framework in which they can fit known facts, in which new observations may be accorded a place, a niche of their own where everything fits in and interlocks with each other and helps support and prove the other. And evolution, despite a lot of problems with it, it was the best available. Now we have something new, something better, and something which has been observed. Evolution was never observed. Evolution was never observed. No evolution in history ever took place as far as we know, but it gave an explanation that was useful. But now this is not useful anymore, because we see things that contradict it. We see that it doesn't work, and we have an alternative which is fits the facts much better than evolution did, and that it can be replicated in the laboratories. And so this is what we have. This in effect removes the need for evolution. We have what is known as genetically modified organisms. That is, the scientists genetically modify, they change things, they make tomatoes to look more red, they make wheat to be more pest resistant, they increase the nutritious value of certain foods, they add to the genes, they add genes to organisms, they improve them. Sometimes they may not necessarily improve them. Whatever they do, they modify them, they change them. They do it in the laboratories, and this has been observed to occur in nature very, very often. Nature does it all the time, and it explains most changes that take place in nature. And therefore it replaces the need for evolution, and evolution is no longer applicable. It is redundant, and it has been accused of being false. Even the ages, the weight, the radiocarbon and different ways of dating ancient findings and so on, even that is very controversial. Apparently it depends upon how the observers have been trained, what they look for, and we have reports that when they get findings, receive findings from these ways of measuring the ages of different organisms and so on, when they receive findings that contradict their preconceived conclusions, they take another test and another test and another test, until and they with excuses that the previous test must have been adulterated, it must have been polluted, it must have had something wrong with it, must have been compromised. So they keep on taking tests until they get the answer they're looking for, and the answer that when they get the answer they're looking for, that in their view is a proof that was at end, and after all, that is a proof that the test finally has been conducted as it should have been. And we also have the possibility that this gene transfer occurs within DNA. There are a lot of anomalies in DNA sciences. DNA is a science. It is reliable in many cases. You have a certain type of DNA. You have children. Your children will have similar DNA to your own, and therefore you can trace through DNA. You can go back and trace your ancestors, at least to a certain degree. You can trace your ancestors back using DNA, and you can also relate through DNA. You can relate yourself to others. But the impression is that at certain stages in history, in the same way as with the herring, the transfer of a certain gene, antifreeze gene, from one fish to another, which does not happen every day, happens once in a blue moon, but it does happen. So too are there changes in DNA. DNA goes back generations after generations, hundreds of years, centuries after centuries, but at a certain stage it seems to come to a block, a barrier, and suddenly there's a transference, a transformation. That sometimes is given the explanation that new peoples have come in, new migrants, immigrations have come in, invaders have come in, wiped out all the previous people who sit in place of them. Or when this is not feasible, when this explanation does not actually accord with the known facts, so other explanations occur. An example is, a possible example is the British Isles, and the British Isles in what is known as the Stone Age, before the Bronze Age, and the Stone Age, the Late Stone Age, the DNA types were I2 and G, or variations of them, and in about 2200 BC or 2000 BC, around that time, there was an invasion of people with a bell beaker culture, known as the bell beaker culture, after the type of vessels, drinking vessels that they had. Originally this culture came from Spain. Maybe the first carriers of this culture to the British Isles came from Spain, but they too had similar Y DNA to the inhabitants, I2 and G. And at the beginning they were also round-headed, not long-headed. They had round heads and robust bodies, and they brought this culture to the north somehow or other. At some stage or other, these bearers of bell beaker culture were replaced by others who had R1b DNA, and according to different cultural findings, probably came from north of the Black Sea area, and they overtook every place where the bell beakers were. These peoples replaced them, or replace them, and they too had R1b, and they had R1b, and everywhere they went, the old types disappeared, R1b took over, and they were all R1b. About 1500 BCE in the British Isles, so this is about 500 years later, 700 years later, another group came in from northern France, also R1b, also similar to those who were already there. They too were R1b. They came into France, and they in turn dominated about 50%, about half of the area of what is now England. And so the whole of the British Isles, including Ireland, became R1b. There were, and it could be said that the newcomers had replaced altogether the oldcomers of peoples who had been there previously, but archaeological evidence indicates this was not the case in Scotland, not necessarily the case in the Pictish areas, but nevertheless there too the R1b replaced the old types, apart from the Orkneys and a few areas where the old previous types still existed to some degree. So there are numerous explanations for what could have happened, different possibilities. The notion that instead of newcomers entering the land and replacing altogether those who had been there, that another change took place, a change affected by the movement of genes from one organism to the other, similar to what happened with the fishes, that the Y R1b, the Y haplotype, or Y the DNA can change under certain conditions, and the changes can take effect relatively quickly, and they are universal. They apply to all of the population or to most of it. So these are possibilities that in part seem to have some substance, have some something to back them up. At any way, at all events, Darwin is dead. He died. He was redundant. Evolutionism is redundant. It's not necessary. When it's not necessary, we don't use it. In research, when you're faced with a problem, you take the simplest and the most direct answer. The most straightforward solution is usually the correct one, unless you have extenuating circumstances that say not in this case. But the most logical thing to do is to accept what seems to be the correct, even though previously we were thinking in another direction. Also, when a solution is observable, can be observed in nature, and it can be replicated in the laboratory, it is preferable to a solution that cannot be replicated in a laboratory. Evolution has never been proved in a laboratory. It has never been recorded. But gene transference has been recorded, is being reproduced, has been replicated time after time after time in hundreds of different instances, and these are increasing from day to day. So you may say that evolution in effect is no longer valid. Gene transference or something similar to it will take its place. Gene transference is more logical and helps us to understand the world in a more correct sense than previously we could do so. And this is what we're here for. We're here to understand what God wants of us, what God wants us to understand, and to know the truth. So may the Lord God of Israel bless you all. Thank you.